what are the chances, or what a coincidence. And I'm like, no,
Right.
because what we were allowed to do in this situation by praying for this person, it's gotta be God.
Ladies and gentlemen, dogs and fleas, pull up a chair and sit on your knees, for we have a story to tell you that we are still learning about. Welcome to Talk the Walk. My name is Henry Moses.
I'm Jenny Tucker.
I'm Jared Moreland.
And I'm Gabriel Moses. We are super happy to be here, and we thank you for joining us wherever you may be.
Wherever. You may be.
You know what I like?
What?
Is that little thing you say, Henry, at the beginning, and every time you say still, I just love that part. Still, we're still learning. We'll always still be learning.
That's never going to change.
Still. I think of all the things that I learn every week, and I'm like, man, it's endless. Golly. I have no idea, but still.
That's like...
still learning.
I was watching Mission Impossible 7 last night, and...
17?
They had a riddle, and I'll try not to butcher it, but it was what's always close but never arrives?
Tomorrow.
Yeah. So kind of in the same manner. We're always going to be, tomorrow's always going to be tomorrow. We're always going to be still learning. I'm still learning. In fact, we may at some point cover similar topics because we're still learning about those topics.
And I hopefully never,
There we go.
and if you have the attitude where you can't learn anything else, that's a dangerous place to be. And we've worked with people that can never be taught anything. It's like, well, I've always done it this way, and I've always done it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they would say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Stuck here. Stuck him in the way that you're being ridiculous.
Jared didn't like that.
It's because I hear that a lot at work. It just drives me crazy. That's like a pet peeve. Like, I'm trying not to coach Gabe up at this point. I don't know how much I love our microphones where they're at.
It's so much better.
Yeah, speaking of growing, Jared comes in and nobody can see it yet. Maybe one day we'll have video, but Jared comes in and has this idea and takes the boom stand, which is what the mic sits on, and flips it around and twists it this way and that way, and then has the mic kind of come in from the top.
Way high up in the air.
And I do feel like, I almost feel like we sound clearer.
I do too.
I think this is how it's supposed to be. They're boom mics, right?
Yeah, I was going to
Supposed
say,
to come from
because we share this with the 3 miles per hour podcast.
Yeah.
I was going to tell them, hey, so don't come in and jack with our microphones, but they're not going to hear this before they record next.
Yeah.
So
No, but I will let them know, man.
It's better this way.
It's better this way. I doubt they'll mess with it when they see it.
It just
like
lets
this.
you
They're
know,
probably gonna,
for the listener, how amateurish this group is, really, in the grand scheme of technology and all of that. We've been sitting with our mics like down on the table, trying to point them up at our, like you do if you're singing a song.
Yeah.
And that's apparently not what we're supposed to be doing.
Or some pastor speaking with
Did
the
you
mic
say it's
beneath
time
him.
to sing a song, Jen?
I did.
I feel like
sing a song. There's a
sing a song.
there is a sing a song, but I can't remember what it is now.
Gabe, I guess Gabe couldn't, because we know Gary's not happy if he doesn't get a song, and I feel like it's
This
been a
is
little
the
bit.
song that never ends.
Or the Happy Monday.
No.
Happy,
people
happy
are tired of the
Monday.
happy
I'm
Monday.
tired of the happy
We
Monday.
need a better
Yes,
song.
your special day.
No, this isn't how our singing is done. It's something somebody says is supposed to kick off a thought in someone's mind that is of a song.
You can't just-
we can't just start singing.
Yeah,
So
you
it's
just
not
got to
sing
build
song
off.
time?
No,
In fact, rip.
Me.
let it rip. Let it rip. Tater. You're saying let that issue die?
Yes.
I was
let it rest in
trying
peace.
to
I'm saying let it
transition
die.
to it, and then we started talking about other. I
did
had it
great,
almost
though.
locked
She did.
in.
Let's roll it.
I'm just throwing a word out there to get us on track.
Random word
Okay,
rip.
so-
What do y'all
What
think
does
of?
rip remind you of, Jared?
Well,
Yellowstone.
No. Stay on track.
Okay, sorry.
well,
Stay on target.
I did see something about the letters RIP RIP recently that I thought was interesting, because so many times, whether it's a dog or a cat or a biker or a family member, it's always they post something, we're going to miss you, brother, rip, rest in peace. And I've always wondered, that's interesting. I understand rip, rest in peace. But Charles Spurgeon said this, whoever dies without Christ will never rest in peace. And I was like, whoa, man.
Man.
Yeah. That's kind of like the pastor that the family who doesn't believe in God asks him to preside over the funeral of that person that passed away. Well, I'm just going to have to tell the truth here.
Well, I've done that. I've done a funeral of someone that wasn't necessarily saved, and you can get through it. Just the thing you don't want to do is pretend like they were saved and they're resting in peace and they're in heaven. So you can gracefully, lovingly preside over a funeral of an unbeliever, and it's a great opportunity to share the message of Jesus and the gospel and allow.
Because if they ask you as a pastor, but that is like why do people say R.I.P. rest in peace?
To give themselves comfort, really.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They want to believe. And at that point, there's no real point in telling them any different.
Well, here's what I will say confidently is, unless you're with the person when they take their last breath, I'm always reminded of the thief on the cross that at the 11th hour got it together and would spend eternity or in paradise with Jesus. So if I have had someone ask me, do you think they went to heaven? And I said, all I know is God judges the condition of their heart. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where they were at. I do not know where they were in their standing with the Lord, what happened leading up to their death. So I can't answer that. God's the only one that knows the answer to that. That's how I answer it gracefully. Like some people you can be pretty certain. And then if you're not sure, that's how I respond. Like, I don't know.
Well, I saw a story about a guy the other day, even that goes right along with this, where the guy was he was a famous atheist that once had been a pastor, and I want to say his name is Charles Templeton. I think I'm right about the last name, maybe right on the first name, maybe not. And so he had a friend who remained a Christian, and that friend just had a heart for him, and they would always debate theology, and then Templeton gets cancer. Alzheimer's, and he's dying. His wife is, he's kind of communicating with his wife and wanting to give him one last try to get you to open your eyes. Mm-hmm. And then he learns, so he writes him a long letter and sends it off. And he's thinking, I'm going to go see him one more time. And before he does, Templeton dies. And he's getting ready to go to the funeral, and he learns that Templeton, at the end of his life, is looking at the ceiling when he's dying. And he says, I see the angels. I'll be there soon. Like right before he dies. And it just goes along with that. The Bible talks about the mercy of the Lord. And I was just reading about Ahab. I'm sorry to go into another story real quick, but Ahab,
that's against the rules.
I know. I'll do it real quick.
I'm engaged.
He's just so evil. He is like the evil king in the OT. And he's not the most evil one, but he was king of Israel. And so maybe the most evil king of Israel back in the Old Testament. He's the one that had the wife of Jezebel. So that's him. And he's done all this evil stuff, and the Lord is still just keeping his promises for Israel. And so he finally sends, I want to say Elijah. Elijah was the main prophet, but it might have been that to go tell him, I'm done with you. You're about to get annihilated. So is the kingdom. I'm bringing desolation. I'm done. And it's after Ahab's done all this evil stuff. So Ahab then is falling on his face, tearing his clothes, repenting to God. And I'm sorry, Jesus. I'm sorry, God. And I'm reading that too late, dude. I mean, I'm you've done I just read all this stuff you just done did. And it's too late for you.
Schmarry.
The very next sentence, God tells the prophet, I want to say it's Elijah, did you see Ahab, how he's fallen on his face and sad and repentant? I'm not going to bring this desolation on him and his family. I'm going to wait until later. I was like, what? Why? He's just done all
That's
this
hilarious.
bad.
Well, you sound like
God judges so
you
righteously.
You sound like Jonah.
Yes,
Jonah
I did. I
and
felt
Nineveh.
like, why are you being
That's
patient?
exactly what I'm thinking.
You know,
Yeah.
But he is
was
so
like,
merciful.
Are you kidding?
He's the
Wipe
most
him
merciful.
out.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's merciful and he judges righteously
Yes.
and perfectly,
And perfectly.
100% of the time.
Yes.
And it's never, the judgment that he brings is never with a desire to bring judgment.
Yeah, right. He doesn't want
It's
to.
a destruction of sin, of evil,
Yes.
is when he brings.
Yeah.
But it's never with a hate. God is love. He hates evil, hates sin,
And he desires that none should
would perish.
Yeah.
But he hates sin so bad that he sent his son to pay the horrible, crazy, ultimate price for us. But you do have to accept. I mean, kind of coming back around to the top. I mean, should we?
I just think we use it too flippantly. When I saw that from Charles Spurgeon, I was just like, man, I never even thought about that. Like, so I was like, hey, may he rest in peace. And I
What
never
is
considered.
should we ask that?
Oh.
Should we say, man, they're in a better place? It's kind of along similar lines, resting in peace. Like, is that when we know they didn't really live a life that was, and we don't know that.
I'd be careful saying, well, we know they're in a better place when you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
No
If
way.
you don't know, you don't know.
Just don't say anything.
I think that's the biggest thing. I got to be close to a family that lost a child like within days after it was born. And it was devastating. I remember the pastor encouraged us on how to respond to that. He said, it is okay to not say anything.
Yes.
In fact, it is best. I love you. I'm praying for you. And that's it. Don't tell them how you know how they feel, that you know what they're going through, that God's going to carry them through. You don't have to say
And he has a reason for all of it.
Oh, yeah, God's got a plan. You know, he's got a plan. His ways are higher than our ways. And, dude, in that moment, they ain't thinking that. They're grieving. So, yeah, interesting that rest in peace. They're in a better place. Just be careful.
Yeah.
So if someone passes away, someone's family member passes away who wasn't a Christian, and they say, you know, hey, rest in peace, you don't say, well, that goes against my beliefs.
I think you have to be a little people smart and read the room and know your audience. I mean, I know people that would do that. I'm reminded of someone recently, their dad passed away about a year ago, and I mean, and then someone else just recently said, hey, say hi to my dad up in heaven. And I'm like, unless something happened at the last minute, man.
It's
not funny, but
it is not. But it's also
me laugh for some
like,
reason.
welcome to humanity.
Yes.
Well, it's just the awkward place that you're in the moment. But Jared, you spoke to something a little bit ago that you can use it as a great witness opportunity.
Yeah.
A moment. Like talking to someone, and if they ask you, if it is someone that's lost, knowing, hopefully people know where you stand, and so they know what you're going to be thinking. If someone were to ask you, do you think they're in heaven? We already kind of talked about that, but you can always looking, my men's group is always talking about looking for the opportunity and just finding that,
Yeah, I don't know if they're in heaven. I know what God's capable of. I don't know what their last moments were.
Yes.
But what I can tell you is you can use this moment to ensure that if something were to happen to you, you would know where you're going to be going.
100%.
I love that. I love that because what is somebody really supposed to say? There are people who also say that they're devout Christ followers that I'm like, I don't think so.
Maybe not.
The way you lived your life doesn't. So in the end, it's like, who knows? And the Bible says every man's right in his own eyes, but God ponders the heart. Like that's God knows this.
Man, that could be a whole nother topic. Is like this person was a Christ follower, and then we're like, no, not really. But if their barometer is the people they rolled with their entire life, and they were never exposed to a better situation, they might have thought they were a Christ follower, but if they never got to be exposed to maybe absolute truth in certain areas, and they were just living a certain group of people in a certain neighborhood with a certain type of person, they may think they were on fire for the Lord.
In line with that, I'd push the red button. I'm like, I've been seeing Mel Gibson like clips lately on YouTube Shorts with Joe Rogan, and he is so big on Jesus. He's so big on God. He says he believes in God. He believes all the way, right? And I'm like, but the way he talks, I'm like, Mel,
a little
Gibson,
vulgar. Yeah.
what are you like? I don't, but I'm like,
he wrote Passion of the Christ.
Right. And it changed lives, and it's still changing lives, and it still will, because the sequel's coming out next year, apparently, or being made next year. But I'm like, I don't know. Mel Gibson's a trip to me. I'm like, he is so raw.
Mm-hmm.
And it ultimately comes down to the heart. Everything comes back around to the heart. Now, I do think there should be fruit, but it's not like he's not showing fruit.
Right.
It's just not perfect. It's not.
Well, it's not perfect. He's definitely
he doesn't look like that perfect.
And
he's very rough around the edges.
It makes you wonder, almost can you get away with talking like?
So what we're saying is,
obviously, no, I'm not.
Should you? No. Will it condemn you to hell? I don't think so.
So is what we're saying, because this could turn into a whole other discussion.
It could, yeah.
What's the problem we have with Mel Gibson? He cusses. So is he going to hell because he cusses? Is that the only thing? Is that the only measuring stick we're using?
It's not just cussing, though.
What? What else? That's all we talked about.
Have you went to dinner with him? Have you spent any time with him personally? Or are you just going off of his language?
Jared.
That's my point.
That's not milling.
That's what we're guilty of right there. Is I'm guilty of it too. I'm not picking on you. It's like, oh, Mel Gibson, there's no way he's a Christian because he cussed.
And I'm not saying there's no way. It's interesting. He's so intense, and some of the stuff he says, I'm like, no.
But you see the work and the work that he puts out, the boldness that he stands, the loudness that he stands. He's more audible about his faith.
I know.
Than most people that walk, quote unquote, perfect lives. Yeah. Perfect Christian lives.
Yeah.
But don't want to say anything about it, where he's out there in the battlefield and also in the middle of Hollywood. So coming from a culture that's pretty vulgar.
What a coincidence that we even are talking about this after we talked about Rest in Peace, that we're talking about Mel Gibson's language and all of that.
That is kind of coincidental.
I think we made a decision a long time ago. We're just going to tell everybody we're going into this subject. Yeah.
You can't remember to say your name, Jimmy.
Okay.
I tried to hand that off to Gabe, and he stalled like, what are we doing here?
No, because I was immersed. I was like, what else is Jared going to say?
No, that was a handoff.
Right over the head. It flew right over my head.
That noise earlier was me raising my flag.
Oh, gosh.
They don't know what we're talking about. So we talked about in the beginning that we need little flags to raise when we have something to say on the subject, but when we can't get in because everybody is talking. And so Jared's decided to use his straw in his cup as his flag.
Yeah,
when he y'all hear that,
if he does it again, I'm taking his cup away.
Yeah.
Please.
Or Gabe will. Either way. You can hold it up to your face.
I promise I won't do it again.
Okay.
I promise.
So moving right along, I'll take the cue.
I don't want Miles Barfield sounding like Mel Gibson while he's trying to edit this.
Okay.
Do we have a topic today?
We have a topic. And the idea is it is obviously about coincidences. And what do we think about coincidences? So driving over here, I was going, how do you even set the table for something like this?
I thought what you sent us last night was
I can
a pretty
read
good
it.
job.
I could read it. So basically, I wrote, this was the idea. There are no coincidences, and that's a statement. Is it just possible that every single thing that happens for a reason, happens for a purpose that God uses for his grand plan for me, for us, for mankind, for all times? And if so, are you taking for granted all the little things he's doing in your life to bring you to his glory and to your fullest potential in him? What might you be missing by not seeing or understanding and moving and trusting fully in this truth?
So your first statement was there are no coincidences.
Yeah, none. I don't think. I mean,
do you know Jesus used the word coincidence in the Bible?
Okay. Well, don't you want to let me finish first?
I was just saying.
I'm like, that sounds awesome. So, no, I've never heard that.
He does. But go ahead. I'll let you set it up and then.
So, and that kind of leads into some other things, like the looseness of what does that mean? Like, so first we have to say, do I believe in God? We all say
yes.
Certainly.
Except Jenny, who's texting.
No,
She's taking notes.
Researching.
She's taking notes.
It's more fun to blame.
And go ahead, Gabriel. I have my flag up, though, just so everybody knows. I'm sticking that coaster on top of there. I have something to add.
So,
it's going to be a good one.
So ornery.
I don't have a flag.
So if we believe in God, then do we believe in what he said in the Bible? And if we do believe in what he said in the Bible, then we go, okay, there are a lot of verses in the Bible about purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I do have those also just kind of Googled up right here. So if there's purpose for our life, to what degree then? Because if there's purpose, how do we get to that purpose? Are we stepping close enough to start to have those purposes fulfilled in our life? Or are we too far away from God to have them fulfilled? But the fact is, he does have purpose.
Can we pick through it one at a time? Because
I'm going to just set the table, and then we can pick through whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet for the rest of the podcast, promise.
No. Go ahead.
We don't
Go
want you
ahead.
to be quiet.
I'll be quick. Be quick. So Romans 8:28, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. So that's his purpose. We are God's handiwork, Ephesians 2, chapter 10. We are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do.
Nice. I love that.
I did too. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So that one's a little looser. So anyway, there it is. That's the idea. Are we stepping close enough to get to fulfill that purpose and let him fulfill it in us, or on a high level where he is working in our lives constantly, and actually we're really close to what he designed us for, because we're all uniquely made in our mother's womb. So how close are we in there, or how far away? And then what about coincidence? And I'm just dying to hear your coincidence verse.
Well, Jenny, did you want to go first, or I use
Amy had stuff too.
Yeah, we all have something, but
I think Jared was jumping in first.
So Luke 10:31. So if you read the King James, New King James, one version does say, and by Jesus is saying, he's talking about the Good Samaritan, and by a coincidence, a certain priest was going down in that way. In the King James and New King James version, it says, and by a chance. But what I would say is, if you take the word coincidence, it's translated from the Greek, which is syncherion, which is a combination of two words, son and kurios. Son means together with, kurios means supreme in authority. So the biblical definition of coincidence would be what occurs together by God's providential arrangement of circumstances. So chance, if you look up the definition of coincidence and you thesaurus it and all that, coincidence and chance are the same word. But Jesus did use the word by chance, but he was referring to his Father as well.
His providential Father.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I have a story that I'll share at some point about, I'll throw myself under the bus a little bit and everything, but I had a phenomenal coincidental experience last week. But Jenny,
Which I think that coincidence, I mean, you're pushing it back to the Greek. The Hebrew does not have any word for coincidence. I think Jesus was raised more Jewish. Yes, the New Testament was written in Greek, but everything came from the Hebrew. Before that, I don't know. Did Jesus speak? What did he speak?
whatever
Arabic,
he wanted.
I believe. I really don't know. But coincidence, there is no word for coincidence in Hebrew. Most say by chance. Most of the versions say by chance. And I think Gabriel's connotation in the word coincidence is just simply random.
Things just randomly happening.
Yes.
Randomly
that is the
happening. Right. The word coincidence does not denote providence.
Correct.
When you hear the word coincidence, you don't think there was any design or plan.
Or
you think it just happened to happen.
And I'm always convicted. I have been convicted many times because especially like this story I have, I mean, it's easy to say, man, what are the chances? Or what a coincidence. And I'm like, no, right. Because what we were allowed to do in this situation by praying for this person, it's got to be God. I'm not going to give credit to anything other than it being God ordained my steps to be to this place at this time. So,
and that is a good verse, doesn't he? What is it? He guides our step. Help me.
He directs the steps of the righteous.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, Henry, what were you?
Oh, no. I was just...
you were looking for a flag.
Trying to start.
I'm good. You were just looking for a flag. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He just needed a flag.
Yeah.
No, when you said there's no coincidence, I completely agreed with you. And then I started researching it, and then I saw that scripture, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to get him." But it was just to get you. Like, I didn't disagree with you, but it was just to stumble you. But actually, the better response was watching Jenny flinch when I said that, and she got her phone out and she started researching. So I knew once I brought it full circle, it'd be all right. But
in my head, I had that there is no Hebrew word for coincidence. So I'm like, how did that end up in the Bible then? Really, too close to the Hebrew. You know what I mean? It's too close to the Hebrew language that Jesus, it doesn't seem to me like Jesus would be using the word coincidence, and he didn't.
No, it was in a translation. Because I went back to New King James and then King James, and the word is chance that's used in those other versions. So
yes.
One of the translations does use coincidence. So
the other thing that it might suggest, like the word coincidence to me suggests no knowing of the future, wouldn't it? If everything were a coincidence, there would be no way to know what the future holds, right? How could you know? Because it's going to be a billion trillion random things happening all the time.
No, for sure. That's why the atheistic worldview doesn't hold up, because it really is impossible that random events are happening by chance, by coincidence. There would be zero predictability, and we have a lot of predictability.
And I'm even thinking more about the prophets of the Bible who predicted the future.
Yeah, excellent point.
My wife posted a picture of me on Facebook last weekend helping a lady cross the ice. This is my coincidence story. And it's so cool that she did that, but I wish she hadn't have. But so she posted a picture of my husband would never say anything, but he's such a gentleman, because I stopped. There was a lady struggling to cross the ice. She was an employee going into the mall, going to Dillard's, and she just couldn't. She froze up. She froze up and was scared to death. When she saw my truck, she couldn't move, and I was like, bless her heart. So I got out and put my arm around her. She was crying, and she began to tell me some of her story as I'm walking her across the ice. And she said, my husband recently died. I have nobody. My car's supposed to be four-wheel drive, but I don't know if it works. And I'm like, man, what are you driving? And so I'm talking to her, but I don't know much. It was quick. Then I helped another lady across the road and got back in. I told Angel, she goes, you know who that lady was? I said, no. She goes, that's the lady you got irritated with at 34th and Coulter. I said, what do you mean? So she was on some ice, and she was trying to turn from 34th to go north onto Coulter, and her car was acting weird. But I didn't know that. I just thought this person was scared to turn. So I get in outside the turn lane and get in the other.
Yeah, like that's better that you got mad.
And I'm driving around her, giving her the stink eye, like, go, lady. I think I even did the hands up, like, come on, let's go. And so I drive around her. She goes, that was that lady. I said, no way. And so we started driving through the parking lot, and she said, there's her car right there. Ooh. And it said four-wheel drive on the back, 4x4. And I'm like, oh, I think it is. And I'm like, we don't know if this is her car. So I get out and I'm looking in the window because I'm thinking, I want to go find her in Dillard's and tell her how her four-wheel drive works. I'm trying to help her now. And so I'm like, how do I know this is her car? And I get a whiff of her perfume off of the door panel that matched the perfume I was walking her across with. And I'm like, this is her car.
Crazy.
We were going to the mall to return something to JCPenney. We tried to park outside their entrance, and they said that they closed. Their main entrance won't open till noon. So we go into Dillard's area, and I'm like, we'll go that way. So we go into the mall through Dillard's, walk all the way down to JCPenney. They're closed. Like, they're just closed until noon, and we can't be there at noon. So we come back through Dillard's, and I asked a worker, hey, there is a lady that works here. She has really broken English. Her husband recently died. And then I saw the other girl I helped, and I said, never mind. So I find the other girl. She said, oh, that's Fanny. And so they take me to her. And what this turns into is her sharing her story, an angel praying with her in the middle of Dillard's in that moment. Mm-hmm. And we're headed home. And I said, Angel, we were never returning that purse today. This trip was ordained by God. The running into all the doors that we couldn't get into, the path we had to take, all the everything that happened, me stopping and getting frustrated was me just making eye contact and know who the lady was. God was going to set up for us to pray with and love
even
later
used
anyway.
your
attitude.
Yeah, your what?
Wickedness?
No, my frustration.
Negatives? I don't know.
My negatives, my frustration, I'm in a hurry to get around her. Like, every single thing about that, because if JCPenney would have been open, if JCPenney would have been open, I would have never went back the other way and scared her and helped her across the ice anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, everything had to be perfectly in place. And to say that was a coincidence and was not ordained by God would be foolish on my part.
Mm-hmm.
I do. That's to me a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about and what I was thinking whenever this all crossed my mind. But and I started to wonder, like, what are we missing? You might have missed that. Say you were walking away from God. Say you'd have just been too hateful of a person, not enough of a loving person to pursue this situation. Because once upon a time, would you say 20 years ago you would have pursued the situation the way you did that?
No, I would have never helped the lady. I'd have been too big of a hurry trying to get where I'm going.
Well, and it's an opportunity of sacrifice. So if you do the sacrifice, then you get the opportunity to go do something that not only helps this woman, but really blesses you far more. I mean, you have this story to tell today because you made the sacrifice. You stopped, apparently in very cold weather, and just tracked this woman down I know that you guys are busy, stopped what you were doing and you went and you made the sacrifice of your time. And because it's an opportunity of sacrifice, really is how I think of it in my head just now, to get this massive blessing from the Lord that you can't hardly stop thinking about. I mean, these are the stories that we want to tell, that we want to talk about, but without that gift that God puts, if really you have to put yourself aside, and then you get this beautiful gift.
Well, think about this. Matthew chapter 10, it talks about that Jesus said that not even a sparrow falls to the ground without our Father's notice. And I'm reminded, I was thinking of that scripture as you were saying that, Jenny, is God noticed this woman was in turmoil and he needed someone to help her. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, it would be embarrassing to say, and I think about how many times have I missed it. It'd be embarrassing to say that God noticed one of his sparrows and he chose me to go help this lady. Mm-hmm. And what if I don't seize the moment to be used by God to respond to his sparrow that he notices fallen? And how many times have we not?
You know what I like about that story? It's neat to me that you had such a frustration with her. You were annoyed by her at the beginning, and that started it all. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Like, that seems kind of sovereign somehow.
God works
because
all things to work together for his good.
You were saying that a second ago, Jenny, but just thinking about it right now, I'm like, would any of this happened if you hadn't had a bad attitude right there. How would it have? I don't know.
Well, it was all needed. It was all the pieces were needed. And the bad attitude later even, being the thing that you have to get over.
Thank God she didn't know I was irritated with her.
Yeah.
I know. You meet these people, they're so darling and you feel so bad for we've all been there.
I wonder if she's like, that was that jerk in the white truck that drove around me so fast.
And threw his hands up at me.
You say like probably?
Probably. Yeah.
What are your thoughts? You're over there deep thinking.
Just thinking. Yeah.
You had any
just enjoying listening today. Yeah.
Is that right? You're just going to be a listener today?
I'm being Kobe.
Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Kobe.
I don't know.
I'll take my shot when I take my shot.
Oh, okay.
So your story does remind me of
your grumpy neighbor.
All right, everybody, quick timeout. A recap.
You were irritated with that guy, and then the Lord used you.
Good point.
Actually, that is true. Yes.
So, recap on the neighbor stories. So, one, the neighbor with the dog, and we called the police on him. Yeah, the dog has disappeared. I don't know. It might be
he didn't get a pew-pew treatment, though, did he?
He didn't get it. I don't know, man. Maybe someone else gave him a pew-pew. I didn't do it. I did not do it. So the dog is just suddenly gone. I don't know where it is. So that's settled. But that neighbor will not wave to me or my wife anymore. So that's the end of that story. No. And then the neighbor that fell in the snow, he's doing good. Roger, he's doing real good. I saw him driving around in his vehicle this morning, and so he's good. So there we go.
All neighbor.
We were curious.
Yep, the update on the neighbors.
Good to know.
They're all good, or not.
All is well.
So so your story with that lady reminds me of a similar thing that happened to me when I was younger. So I was like 23. Henry and I were waiting tables at Logan's Roadhouse, and I was the worst waiter there. And still would be to this day. I can't wait tables very well at all. I got the worst tips and everything.
Hank is a phenomenal.
Henry's a phenomenal.
Yeah, he rocked it.
He knows how to treat people, I guess. I always wonder, why does he get these $100 night every night, $100? And I'm like, I got $33.28.
Yeah.
So this one night, I was always like trying to make some money. So I stayed at the front door waiting for people to come in. I was like, I'll get them when they come in and I will get tables because otherwise the hostess will not seat me. So this lady walks in, I take her, she's a little bit older, and I take her to the best table I've got near the fireplace over there and just give her the best service I could think of. And we talked about art and all this stuff. Well, at the end of this her meal, she ends up tipping her meal. And think of this. It was a filet. She got a filet. That meal was $17 back then, just for the record anyway. So she ends up giving me $120. And I was I started to walk away to get her change. And then I turned right around and I was like, hey, you gave me you overpaid. And she goes, no, I didn't. I want you to have that $100 and thank you for sitting talking with me about art. And it shook me to the core. I was so excited. And I just said, can I give you a hug? And she said, yes. Right. Well, I give her the hug and I said, what's your name? And she just said, Crouch, just Crouch. And so that stuck with me for a good 15 years. I always remembered her.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting there talking, fast forward 15 years later, Henry and I are hanging out with a friend of ours, Greg, and Greg ends up saying that he's doing all this metal artwork and that this lady, the owner of Sunset Center, wants him to put his art in her show outside of the building over there on Plains, right? And he goes, yeah, Ann Crouch she wanted me to do this and that. And I said, wait, I was like, wait, what'd you say her name was? And he said, Ann Crouch. And
your brain starts firing off.
Yes,
art,
Crouch,
yes.
art, all this stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the lady that I met. I always wondered what happened to her. Well, I hunt her down. Now I know. Well, it's the lady that owns Sunset Center. I can be hard to find.
Did you go talk to her?
You better believe I did. I go and talk to her, and she's not there, but their two other older ladies are there. And I said, look, this is going to sound weird, but I'm looking for Ann.
She's not ripping yet, is she?
She's not. No, she's not ripping. She was still rocking and rolling, Jared. Okay. So I end up telling them I need to talk to her, and they're like, "Why?" Like they're super defensive for her. Yeah. Why? What's your business? I was like, "Hey, I know her."
Kind of.
And they're like, and I start to describe, I'm like, look, here's how I know her. And I tell her the story, both the ladies. And I'm like, I waited tables on her a long time ago. And she and I sat and really, really connected and stuff. And the lady just says, yeah, I know this story.
No,
I know who you are. And I was like, you do? And she goes, yeah, let me make a phone call. And I'm like, what in the world? So sure enough, they're like, just relax, whatever. So sure enough, she shows up like 15 minutes later, gets out of a blue Avalanche truck. And I was just staring through the window. I was dying to see her. And because she was so impacted, she gave me $100 and was sweet, kind to me.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she gets out and turns toward where I was at. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is her. This is that lady that was so sweet to me. Well, she comes in and starts to talk to her friends, and the lady points over in my direction, and she just stares really hard. And
because it's 15 years later, Gabriel looks now a lot. He looks like himself, but Gabriel was a kid when he was waiting tables
such
at Logan.
Young, just. So
and
different.
men really changed in their late teen years to 30s,
manhood.
Basically. Yeah.
So she does. She comes walking over, and I just am smiling. I just was so excited to see her, and I said, "Did they tell you, why I wanted to talk to you?" And she goes, "Yeah." And this is going to sound so silly, but she said, "My angel," like that. Aww. And I was like, "What is this?" And she goes, "You want to go sit and talk somewhere over here?" I was like, "Yes, yes." And we sit down, and she ends up telling me that night she was so sad. Her husband and only child, had both died. Her husband had died like within the past couple of days, and her son had died a few months before that. And she just was shook to the core. And I ushered her to the table, but out of my desperation to just get a good tip. Like, I was just wanting to earn something.
This is like the best story I've ever heard.
Gabriel has all the best stories.
I couldn't believe this. I couldn't believe it. She's telling me all this. And she just said, "You were my angel." And then she goes, "But you're so different now." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "You're grown in a sad way." Mm. And I was like, I smiled a little. And I said, "Yeah."
You say, "Yeah, you're old." No, I'm just kidding.
No, I didn't say that. I was kind of sad. I was like, "Oh, I hate to be such a letdown from what you remember," but it was what she needed that night. That way back then, whatever happened was what blessed her then. And now I don't serve that purpose on any level. And she has passed away now. I think everybody knows that. But yeah, it was, all of this was like, how does this all work? How does this all work?
I mean, when you want evidence of providence and of God's just divine direction, there it is.
Yes.
It just, to give that credit to some flippant term, I didn't know the deep definition of coincidence till we talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
So to say, man, what a coincidence. How disrespectful and dishonoring of God would it be to just do that?
That's the core of it. That's the whole thing is, why aren't we stepping in more faith and trust and belief every day? if this is all true, which we know it is.
We see it over and over.
We know it is.
Well, you can look backwards and see it over and over.
Yeah, and how many times do we say, well, I felt like my conscience was telling me? No, that would be the Holy Spirit that's creating what you want to refer to as a coincidence later.
Yeah.
And as Christians and as believers, man, to be, if you're like tuning in AM radio, to be in tune with that is powerful.
Yeah.
We should want to be in tune to that.
And I mean, if I think I can think of things that happened in the last 2 weeks, these things that just come together. If you start not like creating coincidence or creating providence in your own mind, but just look at the steps that happen to get you to a specific situation. How many things could you look at? I mean, I'm thinking of a story right now that's nowhere near as powerful as Gabriel's, but a client gets transferred to me, and he's a veteran, and I'm looking at him. And it's a hard deal, but they're already a month past the time when they were supposed to close. Everybody's mad. The seller's mad. Everybody's hot. And basically a buyer, when they're trying to buy a house, they've already moved into the house in their mind. They have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. So those kids are excited about the house, and it's not very often, I've said several times I have a prayer routine in the morning where I write my journal. And it's not very often that each client makes it in. It's very rare. It's usually praying for the business on the whole. But this client, I just could not get away from praying for him. He's real short-worded, veteran, and I just kept on praying. I really was trying to thinking I had the solution to get him to the closing table, and then it kept on just being yanked from my hands. And I had heard that the realtor didn't really want to deal with Providence for whatever reason. I'd never even heard of her. I wasn't sure what was going on there, but I just, treated her like I treat everybody else, as well, just very well. And kept praying. And I finally get on the phone with this real estate agent. I had, like the night before, said, I don't know how to overcome this problem. I told her and I told him. And I said, can y'all think of anything? Nobody could think of anything. And so I slept on it, and I woke up with the solution. And I waited till 7 o'clock in the morning so I could tell both of them, don't make any moves. I thought maybe that was appropriate time that I could text and people not get mad at me. So 7 o'clock, I sent them both the text, and she calls me at like 8 o'clock on the dot. Clearly she's waiting for an appropriate time to call. I'm on my way to the office, and we're both talking, and she ends up, she's just an amazing lady. Has 9 children, all grown, all military, college professors, all of that. And this client, she said, he's like an adopted son for me. And I taught him how to make scrambled eggs. I taught him everything. His mother died when he was little. And she said, I've been praying so hard over him. And I thought about him making it into my prayers. I don't know if the lender he was with before was praying over him. Mm-hmm. I'm not just praying over this guy's loan. I'm praying over him, and his adoptive mother is praying over him, and all of a sudden I am too. Or was that providence that this other lender, who's a great lender, honestly, just struggled to get this done so he could make it over my way, and those prayers he could be even more covered in prayer. Mm-hmm. I don't get the feeling that this man is a Christian. But this woman that I'm talking to that was his real estate agent and adoptive type mother she's praying over him. And how many times do we pray over our kids that God will put someone in their path?
Yes.
I don't think that we have very many, if any, coincidences at all. I think there's so much providence at play all the time. And if we look at the steps, we could probably see that it's mostly providence.
Yeah, I think we think coincidence. If you think about when we say, and I was thinking about, and I read this too, is when we think about coincidence, well, that was a coincidence. It's always something small. Like if there's something big going on, we're praying through it, and God comes through. It's like, oh, that was God.
Yeah.
But it's those random things. Just as Matthew says that a sparrow that falls doesn't go unnoticed, that's a small thing. It's the small things that happen that we don't consider God is a part of, and we call it coincidence. but he's concerned about all things. And I think we reference coincidence because it's small. It seems so unlikely, but it's so like God. There's nothing unlike him. That's what I think of.
Yeah.
Well, aren't we so simple-minded that things seem simple? Like coincidence.
Yes.
We're so humans are so simple-minded. And I'm like, it'd be easy to just wave it off as coincidence. But I'm like, the part that I started worrying about was like, what about when I brush my teeth?
I know. I got railed on for using brush my teeth. Hank gave me a hard time about. Remember when I was talking about brushing my teeth a few weeks ago about when I brush my teeth, I'm just going to, we don't get so happy and joyous. And y'all said, well, I want to see a video of that. But I used to brush my teeth moment, and Hank give me a hard time about that. Yeah, give me grief about it.
What do you think, brother? Like, with the idea, like, to what degree that, like, what is it like when I'm tying my shoes to get ready for work? Is that actually also providence, or is that just like way too out there?
I mean, who knows to the degree, but the scripture that Jared brought up earlier, and God knowing when a sparrow falls to the earth, for us not to be worried about how we're clothed and the needs that we have, because the Lord has, knows that what we need and provides ahead of time. But also, I just think of Joseph and the story of Joseph, who really, he's a great example of the circumstances that are, I mean, meant for evil. Mm-hmm. Certainly meant for evil. And in Genesis chapter 37, it says, it kind of starts out, the evil begins. It says, but when his brothers saw their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, conspired against him to kill him. They said one to another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal had devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. They just hated his guts, sick of hearing his dreams, sick of hearing about him. And we all, well, if anybody's listening and doesn't know, they decide, well, yeah, let's don't kill him, but we'll just sell him off into slavery. And this begins a long voyage. Most that are listening probably know. And he goes through one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And he's one of the closest examples to Christ and his responses to these hard times. I think he kind of made some young, excited, oh, check this out about me. Check this out. This is what God's showing me, not really thinking ahead. And ends up, making his brothers hate him because of it. And then, but in Genesis chapter 45, verses 5 through 8, this famine comes on, and they end up, his family, he's since become second in command to Pharaoh, and his family has to come from Canaan to Abraham sends them from Canaan. Who sends them from Canaan? I'm having a brain fart here. The father, who is their father?
Of the Jacob?
Joseph's father.
Joseph's father is Jacob.
Jacob, thank you. Yes, Jacob. Jacob sends his brothers on to Egypt because Egypt has stored up their shares and done all this stuff because of Joseph. And so the brothers come, and Joseph lays out this elaborate kind of plan. He sees them, and he's dying on the inside, but they don't recognize him, like you were talking about with your having grown older and that. And so Joseph also, this is many, many years later. And so anyway, they come to him. Well, at this point here in Genesis chapter 45, he chooses to reveal himself to them. And so starting in verse 5, he says, now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Because a lot can have changed since then. Their hearts, the regret, so on, plus fear, and because you saw me. And then he says, God sent me before you to preserve life. So, and then in the King James version, it actually says, ye, so Gabe, you'll be happy with that, thought evil against me, God meant it unto good. I like the way the King James phrases that, but it says, for the famine that has been, and in these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years of famine left, in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest, and God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So he goes on to tell them all these great things that God's going to do.
He could have been so mean to them.
Yeah.
Y'all tried to kill me.
But he had vision, like you're talking about, kind of, and I think that's what he had an understanding and appreciation
for God's.
And so if we can begin to recognize more kind of what's going on in the moment, kind of try or make it a point, because we have to make it a point. We have to learn. It doesn't just happen naturally, but make it a point to see, is there something God in these hard times?
Yeah.
Is there something that
God... Are you looking?
Yes. That he could be doing
in your life right now.
To better me, to use me to better others' lives.
Yeah.
Maybe even the people that did you wrong.
Are you paying attention?
Yeah.
I think so. When you said earlier that you were going to Kobe it, Jenny's got something to say, but when you did say you were going to Kobe it, I mean, that is powerful. When you shared the story of Joseph, it is a parallel of what happened to you, that not being able to recognize him. I could see, so Joseph knows it's by God. Joseph knows it's by God, and Crouch knew it was by God. You're thinking potentially it's a coincidence, and Joseph's brothers by far are like, that's a coincidence that we ran into our brother? Like, that's crazy. Hey, you took a good shot. Good job, buddy. That's powerful.
I got the game winner.
You did.
That was a great
end of the
fadeaway.
Jenny, what's your flag up for?
Okay. Do you think that it could be also not coincidence but parallel that Joseph is sold for 20 pieces of silver? Is he like a Christ-like figure? Jesus is sold off.
Oh, I definitely think
30 pieces of
30.
silver,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So Joseph is sold. Joseph has 11 brothers. Jesus had 12 disciples, but one, if you subtract out Judas, you have the 11, because you have the 12 tribes of Israel, and Joseph was one.
And Gabe's was $103 situation.
And then the Bible code.
Wouldn't it be awesome to get a filet for $17
I'm
today?
telling you.
The fact that you remembered that.
I'll never forget it. It was so cheap back then.
That's powerful. Was that all you had? I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, and then you have the cup that was put into the sack of Benjamin's brother, of Benjamin, I'm sorry. And so the brothers see that cup as a sign of judgment. But it's actually the sign of mercy. Like, let this cup pass from me, but the cup.
Did the Bible say that, or are you saying that?
No.
The Bible said it's biblical.
No.
I know there was a cup.
No, the cup is a sign of mercy because the cup brings everybody back. They put the cup in Benjamin's sack. Joseph has the cup put in Benjamin's sack, right? And so then that is what makes everybody think that they stole the cup. That's what allows Joseph to keep. But that cup is actually kind of the mercy that brings all the family back. And then Jesus says, let this cup of judgment pass from me.
Yep.
But actually the cup of judgment that Jesus has to drink on himself is the mercy for all of us. So no, that's not coincidence. I don't think that's coincidence at all that Jesus said, let this cup pass from me, and that we have a cup. We have the same situation going on.
Yes.
It's providence, like the prophets that Gabriel's talking about in the Old Testament,
I mean, this is bizarre. And just to clarify, because you were referring to Providence earlier, but that would have been Providence Home Loans, because I got twisted up. In case anybody else because we've been using the word Providence, then you referred Providence. So
I believe
y'all
so
like it did me. That was Providence Home Loans.
So I believe in the beauty of Providence so much that we literally named our company after it.
Absolutely.
We believe in that much,
Listen to this, Psalm 119. It's verse 71, but I want to back up a little bit in front of it. So Psalm 119:68. Let's start at 68. Says, "You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes." And it says, the insolent smear me with lies, but with my whole heart I keep your precepts. Their heart is unfeeling like fat, which is kind of a funny way to word that. But I delight in your law. It is good. Verse 71. It is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That is a wonderful way to look at it.
And I've had for a while this thought, and it's been something I've been trying to grasp, the idea that goes along with this. No coincidence is also no coincidence that I'm allowed to go through hard times, and that is God's faithfulness towards me.
Yeah.
Because he's never not faithful. He's always faithful. He always has a plan, like you guys talked about earlier. He always has vision for our life. It just is up to us whether we seek it or are aware of it. And taking the time to recognize it hurts. And of course it hurts, but his faithfulness says, just like a good parent, if you're not going to see what I'm trying to do here, I'm going to let you continue to stumble, to fall, continue to until you learn to grasp. It's going to bring you around better. So his plan is in action and for good, but ultimately for his glory. Because you think about, I was talking with our sister podcast, 3 miles per hour, and we were kind of going, Kai was talking to me about, we were kind of talking about Job and God allowing all that to happen to Job. Have you considered my servant? Mm-hmm. And he actually allowed that and pointed Satan in the direction of Job. Mm-hmm. Which is crazy to think about.
Can you imagine being that thought of by God? Like he thinks so much of you, like, hey, have you considered Job?
Like, and it's not like, and Satan said, what? Well, yeah, but I've thought about you're protecting him. I can't do anything.
God's like, I won't.
And God says, go get it. And here he's all yours. Basically, go sit. And Satan was asking to sift Peter like wheat. I mean, it's a scary thought. And you think Satan's not doing that same thing to us?
Absolutely.
And that God doesn't allow it to happen to us at times. And it was for Job, but the ultimate idea of Job was to get Job to fully trust him, fully lean, and to understand that we may not ever fully have the answer until we get home. It's God's plan. He's working it out to his good, and thinking about the martyrs in other countries and what they go through. Man, I've heard stories and read stories about those martyrs, and their faith and their closeness with God. Jenny almost did that thing where I just went off onto a different thought, but I stopped myself in our conversation.
I saw you stop yourself.
Yeah, I started to go to a different, and I was like, no. But their faith, because of their closeness with God, when you hear their stories, it's easy to be jealous of their understanding of God. It's all they have. And they could give that up and probably have a better life here on earth, but they're looking to heaven.
Yeah.
Just like we should be. So, yeah.
Can I read the opening statement thing again? Mm-hmm. Now that we've gone through all that,
that's a good way to close it. Just read the opening statement.
Yeah. Just consider it one more time. Now that we've talked about it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So there are no coincidences. Is it just possible that every single thing that happens for a reason, happens for a purpose that God uses for his grand plan for me, for us, for mankind, for all times? And if so, are you taking for granted all of the little things he's doing in your life to bring you to his glory and to your fullest potential in him? What might you be missing by not seeing, understanding, and moving or trusting fully in this truth?
That actually reads so much better after we discussed it.
Yeah, it does.
That was awesome. Good job. Good idea for bringing that full circle.
Great discussion. It's funny. I remember you brought this up a long time ago. You've had that one for a long time, and I thought, I don't want to talk about that. I think you had that idea before Jared and Jenny.
It was. We have the dynamic now to get in there.
Well, and just the ability to kind of talk through these things. I thought, God, coincidence? Who? I don't know. That sounds like a weird thing to talk about, but it's just, man, having an understanding of God's plan, faith in God's plan.
Well, maybe the timing was not meant for back then.
Wasn't a coincidence. It waited this long.
For sure, it wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
One final thing before you pray.
Yeah.
Hank, Henry, Hanky, whatever everybody calls you, happy birthday.
Oh,
yes.
We get to celebrate you today, tonight. So just happy birthday. We're blessed to have you a part of our life. So happy birthday.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Should we sing him the happy birthday song?
I think you.
Oh, yeah.
Gary will be.
It's appropriate.
I'm
It
ready.
is. It is appropriate.
That's true.
All right, here we go, y'all. Are you going to sing with me? Or just
I don't know it. You're going to have to.
I'm not getting on the table like they used to make.
Okay.
No.
Attention, Logan's Roadhouse. Can we get your attention? It's someone's birthday. Henry Moses. He's turning
49.
49.
All right, let's sing. Happy birthday from all of us to you. So happy birthday. May all your dreams come true. We wish you many more and hope that you do. So happy birthday from all of us to you.
Hey! Happy birthday. You want to pray us out now?
Let's pray us out. Father, I thank you for your good grace. I thank you for your good wisdom. We thank you for it. We thank you for your plan, though we don't see it, and that you're not caught off guard by anything. But you're always working your good works in us and through us. So help us, please, with our faith and to remember all the wonderful things that you've done in our lives when we're going through our hard times, just to draw nearer to you rather than to shelter in place. We love you, Lord, and we thank you for the opportunity to do ministry in your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Go ye into all the world
And preach the gospel.
Amen.
Amen. I'm trying not to coach Gabe up at this point.